This chip is 40 millimeters wide. It uses no gas, requires no compressor, and needs no connection to the power grid. Right now, it is keeping a storage box cold on just 12 volts. Look at this photograph of downed lines. We prot because we know the grid is vulnerable to severe storms and sudden infrastructure failure. When that happens, refrigeration becomes critical fast. This image of vintage Eli Lilly insulin vials represents a reality from millions. For most people, losing cold storage is an inconvenience. For anyone storing temperature-sensitive medical supplies, it is an immediate emergency. Commercial coolers rely on ice. Ice melts, and ice runs out. In a crisis situation, we need a cooling system that doesn't rely on continuously purchasing a consumable resource. What we build today avoids those flaws entirely. It operates on a 12-volt solid-state cooling system, runs off minimal off-grid power, and costs under $20 to assemble. If you want to master practical, build-it-yourself survival knowledge, hit subscribe and the bell right now. We are releasing a full series of real-world off-grid tech builds. Mailing down this single low-cost build separates absolute dependency on fragile supply chains from true, sustainable medical security. The technology behind this is based on a principle discovered in 1834 by physicist Jean-Charles Peltier. It relies on pushing direct current electricity through a junction of two different materials. As electrons move through N and P-type semiconductors, they carry heat. One side drops in temperature, the other gets hot. This chip packs 127 pairs, but without a heatsink and fan, heat loops back and destroys the cold side. The fix is non-negotiable. Respecting that rule of invisible heat transfer is the only thing preventing you from destroying your hardware on the first try. Now that we have the physics out of the way, let's gather the parts. We need exactly 5 components, and everything totals under $20. First, the TEC1-12706 Peltier chip, which runs under $3 online. Second, a CPU heatsink and a 12-volt fan. You can easily pull these from a dead desktop computer in your garage to save cash. Third, a small aluminum plate for the cold side. This will cost about $2 and serves to distribute the chill outward into our storage interior. Fourth, our insulated enclosure. We're using a standard styrofoam shipping box from a recent delivery. It is an exceptionally efficient insulating material, and it is completely free. Fifth, our final assembly items: a tube of thermal paste, some basic wire, and a toggle switch to control the power. Look at this list. Unlike a standard kitchen refrigerator, there is no chemical refrigerant to leak, no compressor motor to seize up, and 0 parts that expire on the shelf. Step 1 of the build is identifying the hot and cold sides of our chip. If you assemble this backward, you will bake your supplies instead of freezing them. This shows why we apply thermal paste. Even perfectly smooth-looking metal has microscopic gaps. As the components are pressed together, the paste smoothly flattens out, filling all those tiny empty voids to ensure flawless heat transfer. We assemble our parts into a strict sequence. The aluminum plate goes on the cold side, the pasted Peltier chip sits in the middle, and the heatsink clamps down on the hot side. Securing this tightly bonded thermal sandwich is the physical execution of our rule from earlier. It guarantees heat moves away from the core. Next, we cut a precisely measured hole through the lid of our styrofoam box so we can mount the completed hardware unit. Spatial separation is the priority here. The cold aluminum plate has to sit entirely inside the storage space, while the hot heatsink and fan must remain completely exposed on the outside of the box. With the unit firmly seated in the lid, we are ready to wire the 12-volt electrical circuit. Take a look at this wiring schematic. We take the positive and negative wires from both the chip and the cooling fan, knock them through a toggle switch, and run the leads out to our 12-volt power source. Closing that simple electrical loop finishes the build, transforming 5 cheap pieces of loose hardware into a unified off-grid appliance. We flip the switch and the system powers up. The fan spins immediately, pulling heat away from the exterior fins. Inside the insulated box, the temperature drops rapidly, smoothly entering the precise temperature zone required for safe refrigeration. Because this draws minimal wattage, you can power it with absolute flexibility. It runs perfectly on a standard car battery, a 30-watt solar panel with a regulator, or a portable lithium power bank. This photograph illustrates what happens when infrastructure goes offline. When storms hit or the grid shuts down, the basic systems we rely on vanish. Having a dedicated $20 cooling unit that requires no maintenance and runs entirely on salvaged power gives you independence. It belongs in every serious bug-out plan. Consider a situation where you have no batteries and no sun, only the heat from a wood stove or an engine block. This is the Seebeck effect. If you expose the chip to a temperature difference, placing the hot face on a heat source and the cold face in the air, the physics reverse. Instead of consuming power to create cold, the chip harvests the thermal energy and converts it into electricity. Voltage flows out through the wires. This creates an off-grid loop. You can use the heat from a fire you are already burning to charge the very battery that runs the cooler's fan and chip. Stockpiling Moo's $15 parts gives you the ability to rebuild your cooling and power harvesting systems from scratch, anywhere, even when the supply chain has collapsed.